This video will be a reaction to another very interesting video I recently saw on a superb YouTube channel. And I am talking about the famous channel of Dr. Jack Crawford. And you really should go to his channel and subscribe because you can learn so much from this man. I learned a lot from his expertise in Norse language. And in the same way, he has a lot of expertise to link this knowledge in Norse language directly to our Norse mythology. In fact, he is one of my five personal most liked and visited channels on YouTube, and I will put his channel under this video. And as you will read in his short bio, and I like this attitude, he says something like, I am free of ivory tower elitism and free of agendas of self-appointed gurus. And I really like that, because this is the way how you should really stand in this matter and in life in general. Because what is sure is that we don't know so much, and the ones who think that they know it all are full of ignorance. Dr. Jack recently made a video with the title Odin Isn't Santa Claus, explaining in his short video, which I advise you to have a look at, that there is really no good reason to think jolly old Saint Nick is based on the Norse god Odin. But in my humble opinion, there is reason enough to see that there is at least 100% indirect connection, and I will point out some more which most people probably never knew, and which will give another view on the modern Santa and his deers. The indirect connection between Santa and Odin is via the Christianized Odin, Saint Nicholas, and Father Christmas, another version of this Saint Nicholas in England. So we have the Christianized version of Odin, Saint Nicholas on one hand, and we have Father Christmas, the version of Saint Nicholas somehow. So, and these two new cultural conceptions from several hundreds of years ago, who were back then also new conceptions of the old European cultural figure of the pre-Christian Odin figure, as he is named in Jack's video. So these two versions, one directly an extension of Odin and the other somehow a derivation of St. Nicholas, ended up in America a few hundred years ago with the European immigration to America back in the days. And especially my forebears in the Netherlands, at that time this was the total region, so even though I live in Belgium, so at that time it was the total region of nowadays Belgium and Holland before our countries were painfully divided in. So they took Saint Nicholas, who is very well known in our region, to America. And don't forget that nowadays New York, previous was New Amsterdam, a Dutch settlement. So in my language, Dutch, Saint Nicholas is Saint Nicolaas. And also pay attention to the cognate relation between Saint Nicolaas and Santa Claus, and we will come back at that later. So the other version of the Father Christmas in England, like in France, we have Père Noël, also ended up in America. And I have to admit that I'm not quite sure if these two figures already merged before they came to America. I don't know that. Maybe I have to research this further, or maybe that you have to answer, so you can put this under this video if that's the case. Anyway, Santa Claus, who really nowadays is very popular all over the world, a commercial saint, and I refuse to make advertising for that unhealthy crap company. But in this Santa, we recognize a lot of customs that are connected with Saint Nicholas, both in outlook, but also in customs. And the same goes for the Old Father Christmas. But they have also connection with the old, well-known European wild hunt. And many of these very important wild hunt customs are forgotten. But sometimes we can still see them in regional European celebrations. And this will probably be surprising, especially for American heathens who somehow lost connection with surviving heathen customs in Europe, who are only really on the surface Christianized, and they most of the time happen during winter time. But Jack is right though that weak claims and post hoc fallacies, as Odin's horse had 8 legs and Santa is riding a sledge with 8 deers, that this would be in any way a substantial evidence that Santa is Odin. That's a lot of crap. But maybe it would have led to less discussion if Jack would have used a hypothetical premise to explore something like, could it be possible that nowadays Santa is in some way, direct or indirect, an extension of the mythological Odin? And in my humble opinion, this would have been more fruitful, and we all would have more common ground to find the truth or the best theory. Anyway, here is my personal take on things, and I want to invite Dr. Jack to investigate this further. And I don't have to be right either, but I do want to find the truth, because this is a very interesting question that we have here. So when you say Odin, especially in this question, you also have to name the wild hunt. So the wild hunt as Odin's army of his best slain and fallen warriors, the elite army, so to say, that has to fight during Ragnarok in mythology. And when we do see these customs that are linked to the wild hunt and Odin, originally are Christianized and most of the time weakened and much softer than the original. But when do we see these customs? This is a very important question. Well, that's always during winter time, during the dark period of the year. So we see this in the period between somehow the beginning of November until maybe early March. And in winter we can see fractions of the original or Christianized wild hunt. And like I explained already, during the winter time period, when the nature is dead, when the nights are long and the days are short, that's the recurrent time every year that the concept of death comes to the foreground. And this goes in 2 directions. On one hand, the remembering and celebration of our forebears, but also the frightening army of death with their fierce leader Odin. And Odin's army somehow is a traditional cultic brotherhood of men, the famous Mannabund, because those males traditionally are martially initiated, because they commit themselves to a higher goal, and that's being in Odin's army and reside in Valhalla after a glorious death on the battlefields. And it is very important to understand that those cultic brotherhoods of men uh, in the old days also performed the cultic rituals in regards of the well-known processions and customs of the wild hunt during wintertime celebrations. So initiated members, real initiated members of cultic brotherhoods, like for example the old European guilds, etc., had the exclusive right to do processions dressed up as the wild hunt, going from door to door, while they had the right to steal and beg for food. And at the same time, they would carry ribs, and they would smash, or they would hit those with those whips. They would hit on the fields, on the trees, and even on the butt of the women, in order to make them fertile. So in this time, as winter time when nature is dead, so in order to rekindle life energy that goes parallel with the rise of the sun after the midwinter solstice. So in this idea, in this conceptual understanding, you also have to understand the Heathen idea that life is born out of death, and that the day is born out of the night. In the big eternal repeating cycle. Also notice that all these winter celebrations start in the evening prior to the day of the actual festivity. So this also finds deeper symbolical and metaphysical meaning in what I just explained. So these brotherhoods of man are very important and interesting to research, because they will learn you much more about this particular item. So later in history, after the guilds stopped existing, those privileges were given to, for instance, student organizations or private groupings who wanted to uphold culture or customs. But keep in mind that they performed as some sort of street theater the mythological wild hunt. And the wild hunt has in Europe many different names, and also slightly different regional customs, while other in some places the customs really stayed original, and in other places the customs got much more Christianized. And don't forget that during the time also new add-ons came into play. But if you understand the concept, you can still see today very clear the original concept of the wild hunt through all these distortions. So these brotherhoods are very important anyway, because they were always the keepers of the old ways during Christian repression. And it might be surprising to you, but the old active stone masons were also very interesting in regard of this subject. And you might wonder how much nowadays speculative Freemasonry is based on the old ways, especially in rituals and in habits. Anyway, so this wild hunt is adapted on several different calendar days to celebrate Christian saints, and this goes throughout the entire wintertime, the darker period of the year, from beginning of November until early March. So somehow, and always that's the case, that a Christian saint took all the customs, or parts of the customs, most of the time also with their own add-ons, of the wild hunt, and they gave it a Christian touch. And this happens on numerous Christian calendar days during wintertime. You will be surprised how often it is. It's for sure on more than 10 different dates on the calendar. And a very, very interesting date that we, especially in regards of this question, should zoom into is the celebration of Saint Hubert in Europe on the 3rd of November. So we say Saint Hubert is the patron of the hunters. And Saint Hubert has a lot of links with Saint Nicholas, who was venerated a month later on the 6th of December, and who became, in retrospective, as a saint, one of the most well-known saints in many parts of Europe, because he and his wild hunt bring toys and candy to the children. Anyway, but Saint Hubert, compared to Odin, is in the myth is Saint Hubert, a former heathen who rides a horse, who carries a spear, and this spear he thrown away after he converted to Christianity. So that's the myth. So can you see the subtle influence of this adaptation technique that has much more power than conversion by violence or force? So in folk belief, whenever there was a storm, and that's also in many sources here in Belgium and in Netherlands, when it was storm, they said that Saint Hubert was going around with his wild hunt. And if you research pictures, this Saint Hubert is in many cases depicted with a group of deers. And the symbol of Saint Hubert is a deer as well, with a cross between the antlers. And you know this image for sure from a certain drink. So the deer and antlers are in symbology very much connected with the underworld. And you can see this whole question also in the light of the antlers in the well-known Celtic Cúnunos. So antlers, horns, etc. are all in rituals and in symbolism, or most of the time linked to midwinter. And you will see these horns and antlers everywhere in the wild hunt over Europe. So there were also in the old days the horn dances on the graveyards. So Santa's deers are not really that strange. So the deers might even be more original to the wild hunt than Santa himself in the role he plays now. Anyway, so but even though they are now depicted on a very kind and fluffy manner, those deers, they really originate from somewhere totally different. And for instance, in Scandinavia, during Christmas, you had also stuff like a man going round in some sort of procession form, dressed in straw and with horns on his head. And there is much more, but I just hand you some stuff to further investigation. But what's the most obvious is that Santa, as a figure, has inherited very clear most of the customs and outlook of Saint Nicholas. And the link is maybe indirect, but very clear in my opinion. But what is true, however, is that Santa might be the worst Odin form. So I do agree on that part, and maybe this is how Dr. Jack meant this anyway. So is the modern Santa Odin's worthy? No, let's agree on this part. So, but is he an evolutionary and tangible extension of Odin? Yes, for sure he is. this is what I wanted to say about this interesting subject. And I like talking much more than writing, and I mean it in the light of making communication under this video. So I rather do it here to get some discussion going on a more conversative way, because my writing in English isn't that good, and at least you can now not see my writing errors. Okay, please like, please subscribe. See you next time. Cheers.